Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. If you have not signed up to be a book reviewer or a sponsor for this, the big event we have coming up this month, there's still time. We've extended the deadline, so you can go ahead and sign up for that. Just go to the link in our bio. You can also find out about, you can sign up for our virtual celebration that we do every year. It's really fun. You can go to the link in our bio to sign up for that because registration is now open for that. And all of that goes back to our celebration of diverse children's and teen books. And today we are going to be talking to author and illustrator Supriya Kelkar, and she is the author of this upcoming book. I got a preview copy of it. It's coming out this spring. Her for books for older kids like As American as Paneer Pie. I've got some of our other books here, That Thing About Bollywood, The Cobra Song. There's also wonderful picture books like My Name. Hello.
Hi.
So
Thanks
good,
for having me on.
so good to talk with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad it worked out. For those that don't know, we've been trying to coordinate a date for a while, but you have such a busy schedule, so I'm so glad you were able to make time for us today, and I'm excited to get to talk with you.
Me too. Thank you so much again for having me here.
Well, why don't we get started and you can tell us a little bit about what was your journey to becoming an author and an illustrator?
Yeah, absolutely. So my very first book, Ahimsa, was published in 2017, and I wrote the first draft of it in 2003. So I had about 13 years of rejection letters on that book and dozens of more before I was published. So it was actually a couple of days before my youngest was born that I got the phone call that Ahimsa was going to be published, and I was really sort of getting ready to give up on this dream because it had been 13 years or 14 years at that point before Ahimsa, with a book before Ahimsa. And so I just sort of was feeling ready to give up when I got that phone call, and everything changed for me. And so after Ahimsa, all my other books started selling, and I was writing more and selling more. And now I have 11 books, I think, and Yet You Shine will be my 12th book, and a few more coming out in the next couple of years. So I'm so grateful for that life-changing phone call there that happened back in 2016 for me. And as for my journey for becoming an illustrator, I've always loved to make art, and I just kept reading picture books and trying to get better at what I was doing. And I shared my art with my agent, and she encouraged me to start putting my art online and building a portfolio. So I started to do that, and I worked on that for years. I think it was probably 3 or 4 years of working on that. And the week that we were getting ready to share my portfolio with art directors and editors, right before we did that, we got a phone call from Esther, the editor of American Desi, which was written by Jyoti Rajan Gopal. And Esther said that they had seen she and Jyoti had seen my art on maybe it was Twitter back then, I don't remember where it was, or maybe it was Instagram, and they were wondering if I would be interested in illustrating American Desi. So that's how that side of the journey began for me. And Yet You Shine is my first time getting to illustrate a picture book that I've written. So I'm really excited for this as well.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing kind of the journey, the early journey, because I think a lot of us, we see you now and you're so successful, may not guess how long it took for that first book to get published. And so that's very encouraging, I think, for people who are aspiring authors to hang in there, if even you went through so many years of rejections for it. And I was interested about your artwork because I think, like a lot of people, I was first got to know you as an author, and then to see you as an illustrator. And we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but I have to say the illustrations in this are just amazing.
Thank you.
They're all very thoughtfully and carefully done too. Well, we'll get into that later, but I was really interested to hear more about that. But so let's talk about this book. And it's coming out, I think, in April. And where did you get the idea for it from? What was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so It comes out on April 2nd from Candlewick, and I was actually researching about a lot of historical matter for the back matter of a different book. And as I was writing about this little paragraph about the Kohinoor Diamond, which for those of you who don't know, at one point was the largest diamond in the world, and it was a diamond that was sought after around the world. I started to realize that this diamond was a metaphor for anyone who had been colonized, for generations of people who are still affected by colonization, and for anyone who's ever felt less than. So I'll go into the Kohinoor story a little bit more. So for a very long time, for centuries, the only diamonds in the world came from South Asia. And the Kohinoor diamond was a very large diamond that passed hands over years and centuries. And at one point it left South Asia and it ended up in the hands of other people and kept passing hands until it eventually came back, and it was in the possession of a 10-year-old boy king. And the British East India Company wanted this diamond because it was a symbol of power. And so they wanted to make sure they got their hands on it. So they approached the king, and who is a 10-year-old boy, and they imprisoned his mother, and they tricked him into signing over the diamond and his kingdom. And the diamond went to England, and it was on display at the Great Exhibition, and it didn't shine enough for the standards there, for the beauty standards there. So it was cut down to half its size, almost half its size, and Queen Victoria wore it as a pin, and then later it became a part of the crown jewels. Yes, that is them cutting it. And so it became a part of the crown jewels, and Queen Elizabeth's mother wore it, and there was talk that Camilla was going to wear it at the coronation of Charles, until there was a lot of outcry last year about it in the press, calling for the return of all the looted gemstones and so much more, all the artifacts sitting in the museums around the world and in the British Museum. And so she didn't end up wearing it, but it's still in the crown jewels, locked up in the Tower of London jewel house to this day. And it has not been returned. So as I started to consider the history of that diamond and how it had to change to fit certain people's beauty standards and how it was shipped around the world, it just really made me realize that it was my story. It was our story. It was the story of anyone who's been colonized, who comes from generations of colonization, who has ever felt less than, who has ever felt less, beautiful or like they don't belong. I wanted to write this story to remind all of us to never forget our shine. And so that is how the idea came to be.
Why do you think it's so important to talk to kids about these issues like colonization and injustice? Especially, I think this is something that maybe we're used to seeing in books for older kids, but this is a picture book. Although, of course, we know picture books are not just for younger kids. But why do you think it's so important to talk to kids about this?
Yeah, I think oftentimes kids are somewhat doubted, and we don't think they can understand some really big ideas. But I think if it's presented the right way, they really can. I'm always just blown away by the connections kids make when I'm on classroom visits, how they can connect. If it's a historical fiction I wrote that took place 200 years ago in India, they can connect that with something that happened here today. So I think it's so important for us to know our history and for us to know why things are the way they are. I think understanding colonization will make us understand maybe why certain countries have more wealth than others, and maybe the journey of that wealth, where it was looted from, how it helped some people prosper, and how it devastatingly hurt others. I think that perspective is so important. It's so important to acknowledge past injustices and make sure we don't ever repeat the terrible mistakes that happened in the past. So I think it's such an important thing to share with readers of all ages. This book is third grade and up, but I think it's such an important topic that kids should be aware of.
Right. And like you said, it's not just about the diamond itself, but you do such a great job in the story at kind of connecting it to the larger issues like you've already talked about. But could you talk a little bit more about that, about what you hope that the kids take away from this book? Of course, you talked about how it connects to beauty standards. I mean, even just the part about how they cut it down to, I think, almost half of its size, right? Because it didn't shine bright enough for
Yeah.
them. I mean, and making the connection to that, to our beauty standards today, I just think that's so brilliant how you've done that.
Thank
What do you
you.
hope kids take away from the book?
Yeah. I mean, like so many people, I grew up never seeing anyone who looked like me in a book or in a TV show or in a movie here. And so I thought something was wrong with me. Something was wrong with my skin. Something was wrong with my hair. Something was wrong with my nose because it didn't look like my peers where I grew up. And so I really hope that this book makes kids have a stronger sense of self and to know that we are all so special and we are all diamonds and we're all so important and we matter. And we look different from each other, and that's okay. And there's not one standard that's better than the other. We're all equally important. And I hope they get that from this story. I hope they feel a sense of pride in who they are after reading this, and that they do feel like sharing their shine with the world after they see this story.
That is such a beautiful message for kids to have. And related to that, I heard you talk a little bit about why you chose to write this in the second person, which is the first time you've done that. Can you tell us about that?
So I don't even know how that happened. I can't, I don't think I've ever written in second person unless it was like an assignment at school. But when I sat down, it came out in second person. And after that first draft, I was like, oh, this is weird. But I think it really works for the story. And I think it makes that connection between a human and an inanimate object that much stronger when you write in that second person voice. I hope that second person makes readers of all ages really feel a connection with the diamond and realize that story might be their story as well, and make you really feel for an object in a way that maybe you wouldn't if it was written in third person.
Right. And for those that don't know, this is actually like a biography of the diamond, but you're talking in second person to the diamond. And so like you said, it kind of brings that kind of immediate connection to something, especially kids who maybe wouldn't be that interested in history. And we have to talk about the amazing artwork because I didn't
Thank
even
you.
realize when I first picked it up that you had done it. Although I should say people need to go to your Instagram feed because you have some very cool artwork on there, including collages that you've done with your kids, which I thought was cool and they're really great work. But here, I'm just going to flip through a few of the pages and maybe you can tell us about it because it's not only really unusual and really beautiful, but there was a kind of a message behind the materials that you chose for that. Can you tell us?
Yeah. Yeah, so especially on that page you just held up, you can see that, well, the animals look a little different. So those are honoring different folk art styles from India. So the camels are block printing, the elephants are Madhubani elephants, and the horses are Kalamkari horses, which are all forms of folk art. And I used a lot of fabrics from India. There is bandhani, which is tie-dye in the scenes of the water. Here, I'll just hold this up. And there's khadi, which is homespun cotton. There's Indian chiffon. So the textiles of India were one of the reasons why the British East India Company wanted to go to South Asia. And so I really wanted to honor the artisans whose art was stolen and sold with them not getting a penny of it. And that's how the British East India Company, one of the ways that they made so much money. So I wanted to honor their suffering and their resistance and their resilience and their survival. And I wanted to really showcase the art that survived this terrible centuries and centuries of colonization to show how resilient and it is and that it's still there. So it was a really intentional choice to use folk art and Indian fabrics, South Asian fabrics that are made by hand and that have survived for centuries and centuries.
I love it because it is such a beautiful effect in the book. I mean, just when you flip through the pages, just it's just gorgeous.
Thank you.
And the message behind it is really beautiful, and it ties in so perfectly to the story. To support everything that you're talking about. So, what was that like for you? You said this is the first time that you had illustrated your own book. What was that like for you versus illustrating for other people?
Well, when I illustrate for other people, I feel very anxious because I never want to let the author
Right.
down. So I didn't have that level of anxiety, but I did have, I felt the weight of this story.
Mm.
And I felt a lot of pressure that I had put on myself to tell this story right and to make the art in such a way that readers will care about a diamond and be able to connect to it and realize it's their story too. So it was really the most fulfilling thing I've done with my art. It took a long time to figure out how to put things together. It's fabrics, it's tissue paper, it's jewel stickers put on with tweezer, it's cut paper. I used a broken headband as a sword at one point because I was like, well, that's a waste of plastic. There's packaging, there's brown packaging that's put in, to protect things. That's the beach in this. There's jewelry from my ancestors that's put in there, photographs of it that were digitally collaged. So I just felt a lot of weight of the story and I wanted to tell it right. There were often times when I'd finish a piece of art and I would break down crying because it just was so moving. Not the art, but just the process of it. And I hope I did the story justice with it.
Absolutely. And so how long did that whole process take? And I'm also curious, was it like kind of an interplay between the text and the work as far as or did you do all the text first and then the artwork afterwards, or how did that work?
Yeah, so the text was done first, and then I tackled the art. So what I do is I will physically assemble pieces, and then I take pictures of them and digitally put them all together. So it's a pretty long process. It takes several days per piece, and it's just me, sprawled out on the family room floor with with bits of paper and stuff everywhere that take a long time to clean up afterwards. So. Um, but yeah, that was pretty much the process. And then, it goes to your art director and your editor and the designer and the team. And we do lots of different drafts until we figure out what's working and what isn't.
Was this your first time? I'm trying to remember other illustrations that you've done. Was it your first time working with this kind of collage with the fabrics and different kind of multimedia?
It wasn't. So that's just the style I use. So like with American Desi, with my Diwali light, that's what I've been doing. This was my first time, I think, using tissue paper. So that wasn't in the previous two books, but I really love how it gives it a nice texture to the collages.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and so what else are you working on? So now this one's done. I mean, we don't get to see it for a few more
Yeah.
months, but I know on your end it's pretty much done. Are you working on something else or kind of thinking towards future projects?
Yeah. So I'm working on several future projects that haven't been announced yet, but we're working on the cover of Thank You Teacher, which is a picture book that I wrote and illustrated that comes out in 2025 from Macmillan and FSG. So that's almost finished. We're just finalizing the cover right now. And then I'm we're wrapped up the text of a graphic novel that I have coming out with Candlewick in 2026. That is illustrated by Ani Bushri, and that is a semi-autobiographical story about a girl in the early 90s in Michigan when the prevailing thought was sort of, America's a melting pot where we should all blend in and fit in. And by the end of it, she comes to realize a potluck where we celebrate all that's great about each of us is better than a melting pot any day. So I'm really excited for that. We just got sketches in from Ani, and she is just so talented, and I am so excited for that graphic novel.
Oh, and I'm excited to see a graphic novel from you. That's something different. What made you
Yeah,
decide to
thank
go with
you.
the graphic novel?
So my background's in screenwriting before I was an author. So just that format, the way of writing it is a lot closer to screenwriting than a novel is. So I've always wanted to write one. I just didn't have the story for a while. So I'm glad this one came to me, and I get to work with the same amazing team at Candlewick. So I'm really grateful for that.
Oh, and I have to give a shout out to the team at Candlewick, especially Phoebe, who worked really hard and fast over the holidays
Yes.
so I could have a copy of the book before this interview. I really appreciate that. And thank you to you for taking the time to talk with us today. And I encourage everybody to take out, I think they can go ahead and pre-order the book. Is that right?
They can pre-order the book, and if you live in America and pre-ordered it, you can go to the link in my bio and I'll send you a little art print if you want one like this. So
very cool. Well, thank you for
yes.
joining us. Thanks everybody for watching. If you joined us late, it'll be up on Instagram in a few minutes and later on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.